The top athletes in the world tend to have a certain mentality that allows them to perform at the highest level again and again. You just have to look as far as the late, great Kobe Bryant. However, they go through the ups and downs of life just like the rest of us, both on and off the court. But they still need to find a way to perform during the season because, well, their jobs depend on it. Now, since mentality is one of those intangible qualities that you can't quite objectively measure, it's difficult to define exactly what an elite mentality looks like. Nonetheless, I'm going to talk about a few factors that I think contribute to an elite athlete's mentality and how you can develop them. But before we get into that, my name's Tolu and welcome to the gang. Over this side of YouTube, I try to provide as much realistic and practical advice to help you become a well-rounded athlete that performs at a high level in-game and beyond, aka an elite smart athlete. Number one is motivation. Past experiences are a huge factor in someone's mentality. We all live different lives, and some people might just have more natural motivation than others due to their circumstances, maybe from necessity. But whatever the case may be, you need to be able to find some motivation again and again in order to make it through a long season. Now, remember in the Last Dance documentary, and if you haven't watched it, then you should, it's on Netflix. And Michael Jordan essentially made up a story in his head about one of his opponents talking trash about him, just so he could have the motivation to destroy him the next night. Now, this might sound a little bit extreme, and obviously, we know how competitive MJ is on and off the court, but finding motivation in the little things is a great way to remember your why and maintain your mentality throughout the season. And if you're liking the video so far, then you might as well hit the like and subscribe button, because it'll be cheaper than paying a trainer to tell you this, because it's free. Number two is competitiveness. At the end of the day, when you play a sport, you play to win games. So there's no real escape from competitive situations. And a lot of the greats, like I mentioned Michael Jordan before, are competitive outside of their sport too. Now, keeping score is just one of the most simple ways to objectively measure your competitiveness, because there is a number to beat and there's always something on the line. You can choose to do this against yourself or against other people too. But you also need to be willing to compete against any and everybody, whether they're better or worse than you, and be ruthless enough to destroy any opponent who stands in your way. So if it's practice or a workout, try and win every drill. If you're at a run, then you want to make sure you're not getting off the court as winner stays on. And even if you're just playing horse with your 5-year-old cousin, don't let them get one bucket. However, having said all that, losing is also a natural part of sports, because if someone wins, someone else has to lose. And even in the NBA, there hasn't been a team that's won every single game of the season. So you have to be able to embrace the feeling of losing, use it as a learning experience, get back into the ring, and then eventually find ways to win. And that's all going to build up that competitive spirit within you. If you want to see more behind the scenes of how I train myself and other athletes, then go and follow me on TikTok and Instagram at Elite Smart Athletes, as I'm always posting my workouts on there, and I'll link that up here and in the description below. Number three is composure. The best athletes have a unique ability to remain composed in high pressure moments, whether they're playing well or not. And they never get too high on their successes or too low on their failures. If you're getting too hyped, then you just need to bring yourself back down to earth a little bit. So simple exercises like meditation, breathing exercises, or even listening to relaxing music can all help trigger that process, both physically and mentally as well. If you feel yourself getting a bit too low and hard on yourself, then you need to find ways to pick yourself back up. So positive self-talk is a very simple and scientifically proven way to do this. And you can try it by just checking what you actually say to yourself during workouts or in a game. For example, each time you take a shot, instead of starting to think negative thoughts and say bad things to yourself, maybe you just say next shot, because you're not necessarily thinking that it's a great shot that you missed, but you're just moving on to the next shot and you're leaving that last shot into the past. And perhaps you might even need to say this out loud so that you can start to trigger that process to become subconscious in your brain. And then over time, the more you practice, the more that phrase will become a cue, and it will start to trigger that process within you to just bring yourself back up a little bit and just stay even keeled, not getting too high or too low. Number four is confidence. There's a lot of pressure that comes with playing in a game, from big crowds to trash talking opponents. So it takes a level of confidence to perform in this environment. Confidence can be a huge factor as to why some people play better in open runs or in practice than they do in actual games. Similar to how some players became superstars out of nowhere in the NBA bubble. Now, repetition is the most obvious way to build confidence, because it gives you literal evidence that you can actually do something. And I suggest making your training environment more difficult than the actual game environment the best way to get your reps so that when you actually come into the game, it seems easier, which will again give you more confidence. However, being nervous or anxious is also normal because it usually stems from our fight or flight response, which is essentially our body preparing us for action. And the scientific term for this is called excitement. What we can do is try and change how our brain actually interprets this excitement. So instead of just being physically excited, but then mentally we're nervous, what we can do is use the self-talk similar to the last section and try and essentially trick our brain into thinking we are actually excited as in mentally excited, not just physically excited too. And hopefully over time, that can start to make you feel less nervous and build up more confidence in these situations. And a bonus fifth one is to know yourself. Unless you're a pro athlete, in which case DM me on Instagram or TikTok, you probably only spend a max of about 6 hours a day working on your sport, which leaves you with 18 hours of a 24-hour day to do absolutely anything else. And that's 3 times more than the amount of time you actually spend working on your sport. Of course, there are things you can do that contribute to your sport. For example, working on your basketball IQ by doing film study. And if you need some tips on that, then you can watch some of my basketball IQ tests, which I'll link up here and in the description below. But in reality, with this much time, you're probably not going to be spending all of it working on your sport. And because it is such a large majority of your time, it's bound to contribute way more to your mentality than anything you do within sports. So I actually believe the ability to separate yourself from your sport is the biggest contributor to developing your mentality, purely because of the proportion of time we spend actually outside of sport. And what you choose to do outside of sport is up to you, whether that's spending time with your family and friends, learning a new skill, doing non-sports activities, just resting, it doesn't matter. What does matter is that you actually do other things outside of sport, because our sport doesn't define us. And a lot of the greatest athletes on earth, like the man who I started this video with, the late great Kobe Bryant, were experts at being able to separate their personal life from their job, which was their sport. But us non-professional athletes, we also need to be able to do the same too, because it's literally not even our job. It's, technically it's just a hobby. Even though we might say ball is life, ball really isn't life. So we need to know who we are and separate ourselves so that we can just be sane, to be honest. Check the description of this video for a free vertical jump workout at www.elitesmartathletes.com. If you like this breakdown, then check out the video that's about to come up on screen, which is all about in-season film study to develop your IQ. And again, you might as well subscribe whilst you're at it too. But until next time, stay blessed.